that shift. And the story I want to give you is, it goes back to when I was a college student, I don't know, 48 years ago or so, I guess, I don't know, something like that. And I used to like to work construction jobs, and I had a job doing a bricklayer's helper. I worked for a brick mason company, and they were building a gymnasium at a junior high school out in Virginia Beach. And I was the low man on the totem pole. I was a laborer. I was making minimum wage, and what I did was I supplied the brick mason. And so they had scaffolding, and I loved working on scaffolding. I'm a scaffolding guy. I just like the excitement of going up high in the air and being on scaffolding, and it's a different perspective when you're up there. It's very physical, and I like it. Well, so I helped erect scaffolding, and up at the top, though, after you get it up there, you put these runner boards across there, and you can build a whole wall of scaffolding if you're building a high cinder block type of a building. But here's my point. I toted mortar. I would be on the ground, and I would mix the concrete bags with water and throw some rock in, and then we'd put it in these buckets, and then we'd hoist it up to the top. And then when you get up there, you'd have a wheelbarrow, and there'd be 3 runner boards, and your feet would be on the outside 2 boards, and the center board would be where the wheelbarrow would go. And I got to tell you right now, not a lot of people want to be up at 30 or 40 feet in the air with a wheelbarrow full of mortar and have to walk 30 or 40 feet down a scaffolding on a runner board, because it's dangerous. If the weight shifts with the wheelbarrow, it'll tip over. And if it tips over, the boards will fall. You know, you'd have to grab onto the scaffolding instead of falling and killing yourself. But here's what I'm going to tell you. At the top up there, there would be a guy, and he'd be sitting on a little stool, and he'd have a pile of bricks, and he'd have his trowel and some other things, and he'd have his lunch pail up there, and he'd be sitting down, and then there'd be guys like me that are laborers, and we're making minimum wage. And back then in 1972 or 3, I think the guy was making like $60 an hour. Even today, a skilled master brick mason is going to make big dollars. And there's always going to be laborers like myself that are going to be working for minimum wage, giving that man the money. Or I said giving that man the money. What I meant was giving him the mortar so that he can set the block, and the money that he makes in one day, let's just round it off and make it easy. Say he works 8 hours a day and he's making $50 an hour. He makes $400 a day. And let's say that I'm making $8 an hour. I'm making $32 a day. Well, why wouldn't anybody want to be him instead of me? So one of the secrets to success that I want to pass on to you is, if you're going to be working, why don't you make as much money as you can in the same time frame? I mean, the guy's making $400 a day. You know, he doesn't work every week because of the weather, but the guy's going to make a lot of money, and he's going to have a nice, easier life because he's got money. One of the things that we're saying is that money is a tool. It's not an end in itself, but if you have money and you can pay your bills and you can feed your family and you can have some savings, if you get into a situation, you might have something to fall back on. That's a better life. So what I'm trying to do with my whole program is help people focus on how to have a better life through properly handling their finances. In my main premise of Right Thinking Foundation, I talk about developing an overall awareness about how money really works in your life so that you can learn to think and plan ahead so that you can be able to control the things that you have some control over so that you'll be better prepared for things that you don't have control over. The word that I'm really trying to throw at you right now is stability. If we take a survey, and I've done this many, many places, at Achievable Dream Academy last year, I'll never forget. When I first started the class, I had 18 students in there, high school kids, teaching financial literacy. I asked them what their definition of success was. and what were some of their goals in life. And it was very beautiful what I heard. A couple of them wanted to go to college, get a high-paying job, play in the NFL, things of that nature. But I heard some other very deep things. One of the students said, I'd like to have less violence at home in my family. That's pretty serious. We can't take that lightly. Yeah, that's very serious. Not everybody grows up in a good, stable home environment. And others were just looking to be able to grow up and have a good job and be able to have the basic things in life. And one of them said they'd like to grow up and get married and have some kids and live in a nice house. So what I'm getting at is when it comes to managing your money, you have to have an income. And if you have an income and you budget it in a very prudent way, and you develop savings and good credit, then you can have things that you set your goals for. But it's important to know what those goals are. Last week, on Friday, for those of you that are regular listeners, Johnny Thomas, my friend from the Y, that's the 25-year-old, that I'm just sort of giving you ongoing updates with Johnny. Johnny's been working for 2 weeks now, and he's doing very, very well at his job. I know that he doesn't have a phone yet, so his mother had to check in with the owner of the company to get his schedule last week. And the owner told his mother that Johnny's doing a wonderful job, that they really like having him in the company, and that they're very glad that they hired him. And that's a beautiful thing. And so I'm congratulating Johnny for doing a good job. But Johnny has a situation that I think that a lot of you may have in your life. And that is that you go to work, and it might not be a career job. It might just be a lower level job where you're just making money until you figure out what you're going to do or whatever. And you go to work, and you're troubled by the way your supervisor gets on you. And a lot of people that don't succeed in life, they end up quitting because they don't know how to deal with that situation. And so Friday afternoon last week, I got a message from Johnny, and he said that it was urgent. Please call him back. Well, he doesn't have a phone, so I know his schedule pretty good. He goes to the YMCA before he goes to work every day. And so I called the Y, and I left a message, and they got Johnny to call me. And, you know, I want to thank the YMCA because the YMCA is just an absolutely wonderful place, and we all care about each other there. And my friends there that are on staff, they know Johnny and I, and they're getting to know Johnny pretty well now that he and I are hanging out. And so they said, yeah, they'll get Johnny to call me. So he was swimming, and when he came out of the pool, they let him know to call Steve, and he did. I said, what's going on, Johnny? Well, Johnny said, Steve, it's sort of happening again what happened at my last job. Now, if you remember Johnny's history, he worked for 1 year at a recycling plant, and he was on time all the time. He was a really good employee, but he felt like he got taken advantage of because they were giving him much, much more work to do than most of the other people. And he stood up for himself, and he talked to his supervisor, and he said, I don't want to be complaining, but you're giving me things that usually two people do instead of just one, and you're making me do it by myself. And that supervisor responded by giving him even more work to do. And then when he went forth after another period of time to ask why is it like this, he lost his job. And so then Johnny hadn't worked for a year, and that's where we came into the story where I committed that I'm going to help Johnny get a job, and now he's got that job. Well, he called me Friday, and he said, Steve, it's happening again like it did at the last job. And I said, what do you mean, Johnny? He goes, well, Steve, I'm doing a really good job. Now, Johnny didn't know that the owner of the company was complimenting Johnny to his mother and is very pleased with him. I knew that, but Johnny didn't know that. And I said, what's going on, Johnny? He goes, well, it's a hotel that he works in, and he's got a uniform, and he likes it. He sees a lot of people, and he's helping keep the hotel looking good and things of that nature. It's not the hardest job in the world, but they need somebody that's got a pleasant attitude, that's smiling because they're in the public all the time. And it's a building services maintenance contract where all during the day they're making sure that all the hallways and the elevators and everything is spotless. And Johnny likes it, and he's getting paid good. Well, he said that his supervisor, this woman, she was looking for him, and when she caught up with him, she just wanted to know, where have you been? And he had been doing exactly like he's supposed to, but it was just the way that she approached him to get on him, like, where you been? I've been looking for you. And so he started getting the feeling that she's kind of riding his case. And he didn't like that. And so he said, what should I do, Steve? Well, I'll tell you one thing that he should do. He should keep that job. But keeping that job is what I'm going to talk about right now for a minute. At the Y, I've got a friend that's a very, very high-level businessman. He owns lots of businesses. He owns a golf course. He's got a large company. He owns a whole chain of restaurants. Very successful man with a good heart. He's been a supporter of Right Thinking Foundation to help me pay my bills. When he was following Johnny's story the last month or so, when Johnny got the job, he said, Steve, keep up the good work, but make sure he keeps that job. Well, yeah, a lot of people in life are out there, and they move forward, and they have a couple good innings of success, and then it falls into what Johnny's talking about. It's kind of like the last job. Well, I gave Johnny a real upbeat conversation that involves your attitude. Now, Don Green shares it with us. Napoleon Hill writes about it all the time. And that's basically that, the Lord gave us one thing that we have complete freedom to do, and that's control our own attitude. And so, have any of you out there that are listening, have any of you been in a situation where you're just getting kind of irritated at the way your boss is treating you? Well, I did a little bit of work over the weekend getting ready for today's show, and there's a lot of biblical principles out there that speak directly to what we're talking about here. And First Peter has got it, and it basically says that we are supposed to work. It's 1 Peter chapter 2, 18 through 23 to be exact. Colossians chapter 3, verse 22. There's a lot of things out there. Ephesians 6, 4 through 6. It's so prevalent in the Bible that when we work, we are supposed to do our very best for the people that we work for. And the 1 Peter one that I'm referencing right now, it specifically deals with, so what do you do when you're being treated unfairly? Well, a lot of you that are listening probably have kids, and your kids are always talking about something that just wasn't fair. Well, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news here, but sometimes life's just not fair. But we do have the tool that we need, and that is our minds. We have everything we need if we can just tap in to our mind and getting our attitude straight. So what I talked to Johnny about was pretty straightforward. Now, this supervisor that he has, I know she's a very nice person, and I know that she's just doing her job. But that's what I wanted to explain to Johnny. I said, Johnny, in your job, you're making a good wage. You're not a little bit higher than minimum wage. His supervisor probably makes a little bit more. And she's got one goal, and that is to get the job done that the owner pays her to do, that she makes a little more than the other people that are doing what Johnny's doing because she's given some supervisory responsibility. But I doubt if she has gotten training and how to manage people effectively and all those kind of things. I think that she's probably somebody like Johnny that got promoted and said, hey, we'll give you another $1 an hour, but we want you to be responsible for these couple people on your shift.